All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected and all the listeners are smarter than the average bear. And we're here at a different time today. So just trying this out. This may be the new time. Who knows? We'll see how this goes. Don't know if people are ready to watch such a doomy broadcast so early in the morning. We're live on YouTube, Rockfin, Callin, and on Twitter. Probably not going to take any calls today. I'm going to keep this show kind of shorter. Trying to get straight to the meat of the things I'm covering and not do a lot of meandering. Although I'm sure that people like the meandering sometimes. So let's get to it. Oh, by the way, if you'd like to support the show, there are a bunch of links in the description box of almost every platform except for Twitter. But if you're on Twitter, just go over to YouTube or Rockfin or something. You find the links, okay? And also, I'm doing like a new. If you follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is my name, at my name. I'm doing like some music loops in the morning. So if you want to check that out, if you can also buy my music at kevinsandbloom.com. If you want to support me that way, you can do that too. All right. Headline from NPR. Border Patrol sending migrants to unofficial camps in California's desert, locals say. Holding Biden accountable says you have to vote for Biden because if Trump wins, putting migrants in camps will become bad again. This from The Guardian, the jet set. 200 celebrities' aircraft have flown for a combined total of 11 years since 2022. So in 1 year, they've flown for a combined total of 11 years. That's a lot of years. I'm glad these billionaires are doing all that they can to work on climate change. You know, I trust them to lead us in the right direction on caring for the planet Earth. So I try to listen to my trusted leaders and elders and the wealthy people that know better than I do. I try to just trust them and what they have to say. Jets belonging to entertainers, CEOs, oligarchs, and billionaires produce the equivalent to the emissions of almost 40 Britons. Yeah. Jimmy Dore. Going right back to a commentary on Trump. But this is correct. And what Jimmy Dore recently said something like along the lines of, if you are, if you're hating Trump, you've been properly propagandized. And I think he said that in the context of like he said, I don't hate Trump. He's just he's a like any other leader, not a great person, but he's not any worse or better than any of those other politicians, right? Certainly not worth the furor and the fury that people have ginned up for him. They're actually recent presidents who have done, you know, far more heinous things, far more heinous things than Trump has done. Again, not I'm not. This is not Trump love. I'm not saying Trump is a great guy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's not the epitome and end all be all of fascism that they want you to think he is. He just fits the role. It's kind of like, you know, kind of like Islam or terrorism at one time fit the bill of being like the thing that everyone must hate, everyone must be super scared of. Russians, you know, have to be, you know, again, it's not saying that Russians are, you know, they're always acting above the board and, you know, without, not saying that they're, but it's, you know, you have to point to somebody and go, but those people are especially bad. Anyways, Jimmy Dore says the establishment is in panic mode. They're doing the exact things they claim Trump will do. That's true. They're actually doing the things that they said Trump is going to do because of fascism. So what do you call the establishment doing the things that they said Trump was going to do because of fascism? What do you call them if that's the case? Except Trump already had power for 4 years and did none of this. The current regime is starting World War III, killing this generation's most important journalist. Weaponizing, well, Trump was doing that too. Weaponizing the Justice Department against their political enemies. Stop Cop City and Trump, while stoking a civil war as hard as they can. Instead of running an actual candidate capable of improving the country and helping people, the machine only knows fear, 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 and fear. And it's not working. Demented, warmongering, union-busting Biden is losing with no way of gaining back voters. The media and the establishment are the psycho they claim Trump is. Truly amazing to watch. I mean, absolutely. There are, you know, what's a common thread? I feel like I say this every single show. This is what narcissists do. This is what psychopaths do. They point at someone else and do the thing that they are actually doing, claim that they are doing right. So, but if you jump out and get right ahead of that and get enough people on your side believing you, well, then you can pretty much do anything you want. He's responding to this clip, and maybe we'll come back and watch this. I'll bring this segment back. Trump will imprison. He will execute whoever he's allowed to imprison. Execute, drive from the country. Just look at his past, right? So this is an MSNBC clip, like claiming all this stuff about Trump. Did Trump do any of that? I don't know. Yeah, certainly. Wendy, yeah, you know, Russia does the imprisoning of journalists, and they do the the silencing of dissent. All countries do it, right? But it's not like they're, you know, the epitome of evil. When we've perfected that, this kind of deflection onto someone else of the things that, you know, that we are capable of and certainly do all the time. Okay. From Poppy Davis. I actually should probably use this for a title of a show. Fuck, 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 etc. I like it. Another look at last month's record-breaking temperatures in the northern hemisphere. Data information at data.giss.nasa.gov. So this is, this is where we are. This is where we're going. Look at this. Crazy spike in 1 year. That's insane. That's where we are, though. Yes, on this show we talk about climate change. We do talk about the planet and how things are spiraling out of control. And what I'm against is, polluting the planet, harming the planet. So when people say, "Oh, I don't believe in climate change," but they totally understand that we're polluting the planet, right? The things we do are toxic, right? Um, they're totally capable and willing to understand that there's pollution going on. Oh, plastics in the ocean, that's bad. Endocrine disruptors, that's bad. Um, Pesticides, that's bad. Right, fertilizer runoff, that's bad. Algae blooms, that's bad. Well, climate change is just the sum total of all of that, right? If you poison your body or someone else's body, after a while, you inhibit that body's ability to function correctly. Well, that's what we're doing to the planet. That's what climate change is, in a nutshell. We're polluting the planet to death. We're polluting the planet to the point where it cannot function properly. That is climate change. And you don't, so if you're having a hard time understanding the whole CO2 thing, because in a way, a misnomer, and that's in a way like a, you know, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not the problem or the only problem. It is a problem. But if you do believe that humans are poisoning the planet, well, the sum total of all that poisoning, right? You have poisoning over here, poisoning over here. You have, um, if you believe that we're poisoning the planet, the sum total of all that poisoning is called climate change. If you poison something for long enough, the effects become all too apparent. The effects accumulate, right? I'm just trying to put it in a way that maybe people can understand if they're having a hard time understanding. And I also find it a little silly that somebody can acknowledge that that pollution is bad, and poisoning the planet is bad, poisoning the groundwater is bad, poisoning the environment is bad. It's a little silly for people to acknowledge that those things are bad, but like the cumulative effect of all that poisoning and all the humans on the planet, oh, well, that can't be bad. That's ridiculous. Is it? Okay. If, I find that one a little hard to digest. Because it's so big. The planet's so big. I guess that's the theory. Oh, surprise, 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 surprise. The Pentagon fails its sixth audit in a row. In a row. But there are no repercussions for this, right? There's no it's like, well, guys, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? But the Pentagon, they're very important people, and they're very smart people. They're the best people. They're the really most important people. So there's no nobody's getting fired. Nobody's losing their job. Nobody's getting a timeout. Nobody is going to jail. Nobody is having their budgets cut. They just lose trillions of dollars and people go, how about some more dollars, Pentagon? Because you're very important people. You're so important that, we're just going to keep shoveling money your way. And you just keep telling us that you're losing it. But that's just, just chalk it up to the game, I guess. The U.S. Defense claimed progress in addressing deficiencies. All right. What does that even mean? We're making progress. 7 of the 29 Defense Department components that underwent financial audits received clean opinions. A clean opinion. That's nice. I like that. Sounds good. Clean opinion. My opinion is clean. The rest received disclaimers indicating unreliable data rather than misuse of funds. Oh, disclaimer. Well, our data was the Pentagon. They have like all these access to high tech weaponry and systems, technology, all this stuff. They, They have the best of everything, but they just can't seem to get their data straight. I believe it. I believe it. It's hard. It's hard work getting your data straight. The Pentagon attributed part of the audit failure to unstable budgeting by lawmakers. Yeah, sounds legit. These lawmakers are unstable with their budgeting. They keep on holding up the budgeting because they're upset about things, and you know they're really just ruining everything for the Pentagon to try and do their job correctly. I think that's what's happening. So it's the lawmakers' fault, and we got to just get better lawmakers in there. The guys that will just give us, give us the wheelbarrows of cash without any question or hold up, because otherwise we can't properly do our job. Anyways, they're urging Congress to stabilize the budget process and avoid continuing resolutions and shutdowns. Anyways, I think that the Congress has the power of the budgeting and power over the Pentagon and power over the department. In theory, this is how it's supposed to go. That they have the power to declare war or not declare war or cut the budget or, But the Pentagon's saying that we just can't get our budgeting straight because these guys are trying to do stuff. All right. Sounds good. Another not surprising news. U.S. public support for Israel drops. Drops to what? Well, they gave you some numbers, but I can tell you right now, there's not a lot of support. The supporters are way in the minority. I can tell you that it's very unpopular, from what I can see. Just with my own observations, going hither and yon, over the internets, I can tell you that the support is very low. They're saying that support for the U.S. acting as a neutral arbiter in the region has increased from 27 to 39%. That's a pretty big jump. So a lot of people are saying like they don't want them to be the backers, but a neutral arbiter. It sounds like people are getting smart about this. It sounds like people are catching on. It sounds like people are forming their own opinions. It sounds like people are getting informed. A recent poll shows that fewer Americans believe the U.S. should support Israel in its war against Hamas, with more favoring neutral mediation during the violence. Is that too much to ask for? Neutral mediation. A majority of Americans agree that Israel should call a ceasefire and try to negotiate. A majority, 68%. 68%. That's a fairly large majority for any subject that people, put their check mark on for a poll. When you get up to like 70%, it's a pretty decisive majority. 68% agree that I can. That number right there should tell you what people want, and I'm in there too. Ceasefire now. Calling for a ceasefire is not support for Hamas. That's not what it is. I don't even know how you get there from here from there or there from there. I don't know. Ceasefire means ceasefire. Ceasefiring. It's in the word. Cease. Fire. All right. Microplastics are being found in clouds. Clouds, you say? Found in clouds. Microplastics found in clouds could affect weather and global temperatures. No. Tell me more. Plastics made from petroleum and pretty much and around every single thing that we use, buy, consume, have contaminated the planet and have been found in human blood. So tell me again how you don't believe in climate change, because we've poisoned the planet, we have trashed and garbaged the planet to the point where plastics are being found in our blood and in clouds. But tell me again how humans cannot possibly affect the entire state of the planet because it's so big. Tell me how you get there from here, or how you make that logical through line. Just tell me how that actually works out for you. I don't know. I would like to get somebody on the show to explain that for me. To explain how they think that we couldn't possibly affect the entirety of the planet, or the entire, the well-being of the planet. And yet microplastics are being found in our own blood. I want to know how you disconnect those things from each other. Because I'm interested. I am. I'm a very curious person. Microplastics have been discovered in rain clouds and may be influencing their formation. Scientists found synthetic chemicals commonly found in plastics in cloud water samples, providing evidence of microplastics in clouds. And sure, they could affect weather and global temperatures. I mean, why couldn't they? We got plastic clouds, guys. David Ulrich. Well, this wouldn't be a properly doomer channel without some very heavy doom. So let's read this. The world has already ended due to climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. It's not just about CO2. I know it's easier to dismiss it if it's just like they say that CO2 is warming the planet. Okay, but it's kind of like bigger than that. Biodiversity loss. The world in which civilization was born has already ended. Most people just don't know it yet. The world that many of us grew up in is already gone, replaced by a world of superstorms, mega droughts, brutal heat waves, rising sea levels, toxic chemicals, and mass extinction. It happened so gradually that most people didn't even notice, but they will soon. Many people, particularly those in first world countries, have been relatively insulated from the effects of the polycrisis. That's a good term, polycrisis. Even if they have seen their standard of living drop, so it's easy for them to dismiss warnings about the end of the world. I've often heard people saying things like, "What's with all the doom and gloom? Sure, the weather is a little worse, but for the most part, things are fine." The purpose of this article is to prove that things are not fine. In fact, things are worse than ever, and it's all downhill from here. Okay, so we'll probably look at that article. And then lastly, before I go back to that, Jimmy Dore, again, this was making the rounds. This was making the rounds a lot, like during the pandemic, this video, which is CBS News, I think was it Dan Rather? Not Dan Rather, someone else. Maybe it is Dan Rather. Doing a whole expose. There was a pandemic, quote unquote, in 1976. And an emergency vaccine was pushed on the USA for this pandemic. And many were injured. In the news, it was not yet owned by a Big Pharma, investigated, finding a story identical to what's happened with the COVID, right? So Jimmy Dore said the COVID vaccine wasn't the first time the government poisoned us with an emergency vaccine. Watch this, but please, whatever you do, don't look into the COVID vaccine or the Cleveland Clinic study on boosters or anything that used to be called informed consent, but now is called doing your own research, which is for dummies. Like, only crazy people read stuff and try to find out knowledge and stuff. That's what weirdos do. All right. Well, why would you want to do that? Just listen to the experts. They'll tell you. They'll tell you what's good for you, and if you don't do what they say, then you're clearly um, you hate people and you want people to die, and it doesn't matter if you don't want you to die. Like you might be concerned about you dying, but that's not important. What's important is that other people don't die because you did your own thinking about things, right? Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can bring this up. All right, this is some proper doom. I don't know if I'm going to read this whole thing because I think it's a lot of the same information that people have read for years, all over and over and over. Um, and I know it's probably for people that are new to this information. Maybe it's good to have some of it. So, let's see. Many people. So I already read this first paragraph. Many people, particularly those in first world countries, have been relatively insulated from the effects of the polycrisis. I read this already, so it's easy for them to dismiss warnings about the end of the world. I've often okay. Civilization was born during the Holocene, an epoch that lasted about 10,000 years. During this time, the average global temperature was incredibly stable, never varying more than 1°C. As a result, weather patterns were also very stable, creating conditions that were perfect for societies to flourish. With more predictable weather, farmers were able to greatly expand agriculture, and the ability to stockpile grain contributed to the development of the first civilizations. Humans have had the intelligence necessary to form civilizations for about 300,000 years, but the Holocene made it possible. We inherited a beautiful world covered with vast forests and teeming with millions of species, and in just a couple hundred years, we destroyed it. Forests are dying, countless species are going extinct, the weather has become increasingly dangerous and unpredictable, the Holocene has ended, and we are entering a dark new epoch known as the Anthropocene, which is defined by humanity's impact on geology and the Earth's ecosystems. Let's take a closer look at the Anthropocene and what we can expect to see as we journey through it. Climate change, the most obvious sign that the Holocene has ended, is climate change. Throughout the Holocene, the concentration of carbon dioxide, CO2 in the atmosphere was below 300 parts per million. Now it's well above 400 parts per million and rising fast. CO2 levels have spiked at various times throughout Earth's history, but it's usually from volcanoes. The result is widespread biodiversity loss because many species are unable to adapt to spiking temperatures. Currently, CO2 is being emitted 200 times faster than past extinction events. That means temperatures are going to rise faster than they have in millions of years, setting us up for what could become the worst mass extinction event in Earth's history. We won't know until we get there, but I can assure you it'll be a super fun trip. Already, we've had the hottest 12-month period in 125,000 years. The average global temperature has risen nearly 1.5 C since pre-industrial times. Glad we're admitting that and acknowledging that, bringing about the hottest summer on record and series of devastating heat waves, some of which killed people with the power when the power went out. Later this century, the heat will make huge swaths of the planet uninhabitable for humans, or this decade, whichever you will like. I know it's easier to hear later this century, right? It just doesn't make you feel as quite as like, what? But if you change this sentence to later this decade, the heat will make huge swaths of the planet uninhabitable for humans, then you might go, did you say this decade? Oh. When that happens, people will be forced to move closer to the poles, but those places will experience extreme heat waves as well, which will cause the permafrost to thaw faster, releasing more greenhouse gases and making the planet even hotter. Greenland has already seen its share of record-breaking heat waves. Normally, the air above the peak of Greenland's ice sheet is so cold that it only snows there. But a couple of years ago, for the first time in recorded history, it rained, causing the ice sheet to melt even faster. At this point, it has shrunk beyond the point of no return and will add at least another foot of sea level rise. Even Antarctica is getting extreme heat waves. Last year, parts of the continent had temperatures 38.5 C above normal, the hottest temperature anomaly ever recorded. The continent is becoming increasingly unrecognizable, with moss, algae, and flowers blooming like never before. The ocean around, well, but we like flowers. The ocean around Antarctica is also getting warmer. The lack of sea ice this year was so incredibly low that it shouldn't have been possible. As a result, thousands of baby penguins died, and experts believe emperor penguins could go extinct by the end of the century, end of the century, end of the century. It's not just the sea ice that's melting. Scientists now believe that the melting of the West Antarctic ice sheet is unavoidable and will eventually bring another 10 foot or 10 feet of sea level rise. This is a huge deal. It means thousands of coastal cities around the world will eventually be abandoned, and yet the average person doesn't even know. Well, by the time that happens, the mass migration will have already started, right? It's going to be, the heat is going to get you before the sea level rise does, right? Sea level rise is a way, way after effect. So I don't think, even though it's already happening, it's already affecting people right now as we speak, right? It's affecting people in Miami. It's affecting people in Hawaii, king tides, all over the place. Carolinas, New York, right? The storm surges are bigger and bigger than ever. Anyways, I'm not going to read too much more of this, but you guys get the picture. As the world warms, glaciers that people depend on for drinking and irrigation are melting. Nearly 2 billion people rely on the Himalayan glaciers for water, but they're quickly disappearing. By the end of the century, they'll be 75% smaller. Again, end of the century, end of the century, end of the century. Not really sure why that's being put as the time. Yeah, some things end of the century, some things much, much faster than that. Civilization can't exist without reliable sources of water, but climate change is warping the fresh water cycle, making many places too dry for societies to inhabit. We're already facing a major water crisis, and this is just the beginning. Droughts are permanently changing the land and turning some places into desert. Things are so bad that entire lakes are drying up, ruining the lives of farmers who are committing suicide at record rates. Even the Great Salt Lake will probably dry up by the end of the decade. All right, end of the decade. That's actually, kind of a more realistic timeline. When it does, it will produce plumes of toxic dust, putting the health of millions at risk. The rivers are drying up too. Both the Mississippi River and the Amazon River are hitting record lows. Some other rivers hitting record lows include the Nile River, the Indus River, and the Rio Grande, and the Colorado River. There are many others, not to mention all the streams that are vanishing. Farmers are increasingly relying on aquifers to water their crops, but those are also being depleted. Already, thousands of wells around the world are running dry. Farmland is being abandoned. This will push food prices even higher. All right. I'm going to leave that there. If you guys want to read this, just go to David Ulrich on Twitter, ULL or RICH. I don't know if it's Ulrich or Ulrich. I think it's Ulrich, but and you can read the rest of this, which is just a litany of, it's just a rundown on like all the things, right? Which we pretty much cover every single day here. Let's watch this video, and then I'm gonna leave after that. I gotta move on with my day, and I was trying to keep this a little shorter today. But this video got a lot of play.
1976. That was the year.
This is 15 minutes long, so we're not gonna play the whole thing. But this is I think from a CBS broadcast.
Government told us all that the flu season is upon us. Which type will we worry about this year? And what kind of shots will we be told to take? Remember the swine flu scare of 1976? That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic. Well, 46 million of us obediently took the shot. And now 4,000 Americans are claiming damages from Uncle Sam amounting to $3.5 billion because of what happened when they took that shot. By far the greatest number of the claims, 2/3 of them, are for neurological damage or even death, allegedly triggered by the flu shot. We pick up the story back in 1976 when the threat posed by the swine flu virus seemed very real indeed.
This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States.
Wasn't that exactly the stuff that they were saying during COVID? Remember the pandemic in 1917, 1918? They were it was the same thing. Oh man, remember that was really bad. Millions of people died.
States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
See how easy it is to...
Thus, the U.S. government's publicity machine was cranked into action to urge all America to protect itself against the swine flu menace.
Influenza is serious business. During major flu epidemics, millions of people are sick and thousands die. Well, this year you can get protection. The vaccines are safe, easy to take, and they can protect you against flu. So roll up your sleeve. Protect yourself.
One of those who did roll up her sleeve was Judy Roberts. She was perfectly healthy, an active woman, when in November of 1976, she took her shot. 2 weeks later, she says, she began to feel a numbness starting up her legs.
I joked about it at that time. I said I'll be numb to the knees by Friday if this keeps up. By the following week, I was totally paralyzed.
So completely paralyzed, in fact, that they had to operate on her to enable her to breathe. And for 6 months, Judy Roberts was a quadriplegic. The diagnosis? A neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS for short.
Guillain-Barré. Where have you heard that? Have you heard anybody suffering from that recently?
These neurological diseases are little understood. They affect people in different ways. As you can see in these home movies taken by a friend, Judy Roberts' paralysis confined her mostly to a wheelchair for over a year. But this...
All right, I'm not going to play any more of that. I just want to, it's a go to Jimmy Dore's page on Twitter, and you can watch the rest of that video. I don't have time to play it all, but what I wanted to say, and just after that, right, I think it was during the Reagan administration, is when the pharmas got total immunity from Ronald Reagan. They indemnified them. So, right? So that happened. They were like, everybody was like, hey, I think it's this thing that you told us all to take, and we want to sue you now. And they were like, we can't have that. We have to actually make sure that never happens again. So, Mr. Reagan, sir, President Reagan and sir, please, could you give us total blanket immunity for this stuff in case this happens again? And he was like, sure. Where do I sign, fellas? That's my best Ronald Reagan impression. Well, total immunity. Okay, well, sounds good. Where do I sign? All right. That does it for me. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I will see you tomorrow at the same time. Let's try it. Let's do it again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Might be a little too early for some people, but not for me. All right. Peace out, y'all. I appreciate you. William, I can't take any calls today. I gotta go, man. I apologize. I'm trying to do it tomorrow. All right.